We've certainly heard about the frightening stories about contaminated water in Flint, Michigan, but it turns out there's also reason for concern about lead-contaminated drinking water in many of our nation's public schools. So our ABC News investigative team looked into dozens of schools and discovered that in one district just 40 miles outside of New York City, children haven't been able to use their school water fountains for years. ABC's Deborah Roberts has that story for our network-wide series, The American Classroom.
I wake up at 6 in the morning, I get ready, my bus comes at 7 o'clock, usually a little bit earlier than that. Having the right to an education is very important to me because I come from a family who didn't have access to education, and I try my best to get the education that I need so I can succeed.
16-year-old Francis Galicia, a high school student at the East Ramapo Central School District in New York, is fighting for something many Americans take for granted.
We don't have access to running water where you have a water fountain. They don't acknowledge the fact that we're struggling. But now I'm here telling you that we are struggling.
In this school district just north of New York City, nearly 10,000 students who attend the 13 public schools in the area have limited access to safe running drinking water.
Why can't you use the water fountain?
Because there's lead contamination in our water.
And how long has this been going on?
Since I was in the 4th grade.
Since you were in the 4th grade?
Yeah, since I was in the 4th grade.
And you're a junior in high school?
Yeah, I'm a junior in high school.
Some drinking fountains in the district were shut off in 2016 after lead was detected in the water, traced back to the school's fixtures. The school district says it's providing bottled water for the students to drink while waiting for a more permanent fix.
Are they fixing the problem?
No, they're not, because we run out of that water as soon as it gets hot.
If your water cooler runs out at school and you're thirsty, what do?
You stay thirsty.
A state-mandated survey of the public school buildings this year found them to be in failing condition, partly due to the lack of clean running water.
There are those who would argue that school systems are scrambling to do more with less. They're tapped out when it comes to money. They're working hard to do a lot with what they have, what little they have.
This isn't a new problem in East Ramapo. Every child has the right to go to the public schools in East Ramapo like every place else. And the government is responsible to make those schools a place where education happens and that is safe.
The kids of East Ramapo are not alone. Across the nation, many schools are dealing with issues of lead, which can enter the water through pipes or plumbing fixtures containing lead.
Lead is baked into how it is we deliver water through the pipes and in our homes. Even if you go to a hardware store and you find something that's labeled lead-free, they allow 0.25% lead.
Medical experts say children are particularly vulnerable to lead's toxic effects.
It can cause brain damage. It can cause these irreversible long-term changes that can affect things such as behavior, attention, learning, the list goes on, and it's devastating.
But no one really knows how widespread the danger is in schools because there's no federal law requiring testing for lead in schools that get water from public water systems, which supply water to about 90% of the U.S. population. And state regulations for schools vary, with the majority not requiring tests.
Unfortunately, school regulation is mostly voluntary. Unless the states or local school districts are prioritizing it, mostly folks don't know what's going on.
Lead can be odorless. The water can still appear clear. It's not like if your water is tainted with lead, it's going to be brown or it's going to have some symbol where you can say, this is lead.
The EPA does require schools and daycares that operate on their own water system, about 10% of all schools, to test and make the results public. An ABC News analysis of this data revealed that of the more than 7,000 school systems required to test by the EPA, 77% of test samples had some level of lead contamination. 16% were in the double digits, and 6% exceeded the EPA's recommended maximum threshold.
It's important for people to understand that there is no safe level of lead for consumption.
We wanted to know where schools stand now with lead levels in their water.
So it's the same water line.
So ABC News teamed up with 8 ABC TV stations across the nation to gain access and information from schools about lead in their water. Reaching out to more than 130 school districts across 11 states, districts that represent more than 4,000 schools with more than 3 million students who rely on schools to provide them with water for most of the week.
Hydration is so incredibly important. Children need to know that they can go to that drinking fountain or they can go to that water bottle filling station and it's going to be safe, clean drinking water.
Of the schools we reached out to, 41 agreed to answer questions via email or over the phone, and the responses on what they were doing to track lead in their water varied. Some saying they were part of a voluntary testing program, others saying they plan to test soon. 15 school districts or companies that tested on their behalf did agree to speak with our team, like in Indiana.
Do you think that people would be surprised to find out that there is lead found in our schools?
I think they would be.
Atlanta.
We got to protect our students. We got to protect our employees.
And Jersey City, where fixing the problem came at high costs.
It's about another $5 million to finish this project. It's very expensive.
Some school districts, like in Chicago, describing their results.
Roughly 10% of these samples exceed the lead standard.
So that's concerning.
It is, but that's why we continually test, flush, to make sure that we're meeting that Illinois Department of Public Health standard.
But 7 districts declined our request, and the majority of schools we reached out to, 75 districts, ignored our request, not responding at all.
In a number of states, they have passed testing and remediation. Unfortunately, those regulations are not health protective and sometimes lead school districts just to decide to turn off all the water, which is not a good solution.
He's one of many water safety advocates pushing for a more proactive approach.
There's a really good, cost-effective, and efficient solution that's health protective, and that's called Filter First.
It's a strategy now followed by schools in Flint, Michigan, a community recently at the center of controversy after dangerous levels of lead were found in its water supply.
We turn now to Michigan and to the battle over lead in the water in the city of Flint.
Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed the Filter First bills in October, which require schools and daycares to install and maintain lead-removing filters at all designated drinking and cooking water outlets. Professors Laura Sullivan and Nancy Love,
we're going to take 5 samples, and we taped it together to make it easy for you,
are part of a team that worked with Flint schools like Accelerated Learning Academy to get water filters installed on school fountains, equipment paid for by a foundation run by Elon Musk.
I've been working with students here for a while, just learning about how air and water are filtered.
The team regularly tests the water. ABC News was invited to see the process.
We are actually getting the water going in, and we're getting the water coming out. Our focus is lead, and so we're definitely monitoring for lead.
They're joined by 2 students this day, Maya and Ariel, who are learning how to test the waters themselves.
Ew. Whoa. Ew. I use that one a lot. That's nasty.
And it helps them to see the filters in action.
It most definitely encouraged me to make others drink that water.
I feel like once you see it yourself, it just make it a little bit better.
Flint schools are still waiting for the testing results, but Dr. Love says the discoloration we saw in one sample wasn't caused by lead.
That's why we do the analysis. If the water's been sitting for a few days, it might pick up some sediment and pull it through. Kids spend more time in school buildings than any other place, second only to their home. So we know that this is an opportunity to provide them with water that is free of lead.
Advocates say communities of color often bear the brunt of lead issues in their water. In Flint, some allege the government was slow to act because the community is predominantly black. Government officials there deny that race was a factor. Back in New York, the state's Civil Liberties Union, the NYCLU, has likened the situation in East Ramapo to environmental racism, since the majority of students are of color. The organization's calling for the state to intervene and take over.
You sent a letter to Governor Hochul and other regulators comparing East Ramapo to, quote, the environmental racism seen in Flint, Michigan. Is it fair to compare this to Flint, though, when we're talking about a water system in Flint? And here we're talking about equipment, still not great, but is it fair to compare it to Flint?
What went on in Flint was that people were put at risk. What's going on in East Ramapo is that children are being put at risk because they're going to school. And that's comparable. This is 21st century Jim Crow, 40 miles from New York City.
The East Ramapo School District, School Board, and the state of New York did not respond to our questions about claims of racial injustice. But the state and the school district telling us they're working to replace the fixtures by the start of the new school year.
What do you want to see done?
I just want to be in an environment where I don't feel like I've lost opportunities, where I'm allowed to the same things that other people are allowed to around the United States. I want the water contamination to go away. I want them to prioritize the need for clean, accessible water.
An eye-opening report there. Our thanks to Deborah Roberts for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.